What's up? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Periodic Table. This is the weekly science news show that I like to do over here on my YouTube channel where we talk about the hottest science news stories of the week. And are we experts by any means? No, normally not. Sometimes we get experts on this show. That term can sometimes be a little more subjective than you would like to imagine. But hey, the whole point is, the way I like to see it, this is one big virtual science classroom, and we are all learning something new together today. And I am, of course, your host, Brandon Hanna. You might know me as a host formerly over at AfterBuzz TV or the Popcorn Talk Network, or you might know me over at the Movie Trivia Schmoedown as the hitman of movie trivia. But what you might not know is I'm also a mechanical engineer, and I have a passion for all things science, technology, mathematics, you name it. And so, well, this is something I like to do on my channel, is talk about science news with some friends of mine who are also, I like to think they're quite intelligent, and I think we got a smart cookie on the show here today. You might know him as a host of the Schmoedown Rundown over at the Schmoedown Entertainment Network. It is Frank Janisch. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Brand. I think this is a long time coming because, you talk about up top there, sometimes you have experts. I am an expert, just maybe not in this field, but expert, yeah.
What are you an expert in, Frank?
Being an expert in, well, let's just put it this way, numbers, right? Let's just put
There
it
you
out
go.
there, right? Numbers. Like, that's what the people want to hear. That's what the people know. And the people are right. The people are right.
Exactly. We like numbers here on this show. Sometimes we even like numbers, as some might refer to you as, Frank. But some might. We've even had Alex Marzonia on this show before. He likes to refer to himself as a self-proclaimed math boy. So, yeah, math, numbers, science, it all kind of goes together, and we have a great show for you all here today. Our first story is going to be about gravitational waves confirming a black hole law predicted by Stephen Hawking. We also have pond scum. It can release a paralyzing pollutant into the air. We're going to talk about that, and hopefully there's no dangers to us or anybody around pond scum. And of course, we have a special segment for you all this week, something I am calling Two Wrongs Don't Make a Right, but Three Rights Make a Left. Why we should abolish the left turn according to science. So get ready for that. If you guys like left turns or don't like left turns, maybe there's a friendly little debate to be had there. But before we do, let's jump all the way back up to our number one story for this week. And we are talking about gravitational waves confirming a black hole predicted by Stephen Hawking. So despite their mysterious nature, black holes are thought to follow certain simple rules. Now, one of the most famous black hole laws, which is predicted by Stephen Hawking, has been confirmed with gravitational waves. So as the article states here, guys, according to the black hole area theorem developed by Stephen Hawking in the early 1970s, black holes can't decrease in surface area over time. The area theorem fascinates physicists because it mirrors a well-known physics rule that the disorder or entropy can't decrease over time. Instead, entropy consistently increases. So, I think a lot of you guys out there are probably familiar with entropy. I remember watching one of those like How the Universe Works shows on the Science Channel or the History Channel back in the day. Right. And one of the things that fascinated me was when they were talking about entropy, they were talking about how, when you have like headphones and you put them in a drawer, they just naturally get all kind of tangled up. This one's not too bad. This one was sitting on top of the desk, but it does have some knots in it. And that they related that to entropy, saying for whatever reason, disorder happens over time in the universe. Just chaos, all kinds of fun stuff, as simple as headphones getting tangled and a desk drawer. And that's kind of what they're talking about here with black holes, right? Is that, I don't know if this is a good analogy, but the whole you can't put the genie back in the bottle type thing. It's like, hey, once you put mass into a black hole and it increases the size of the black hole, it's not going to get any smaller. They do mention in this article that when something new of a new massive object falls into a black hole, it does increase its spin rate, which does decrease the size, but ultimately the increase of the matter itself is greater than the decrease in size. So you do continue to have a net increase, which was proven just recently by gravitational waves, evidently. So before I continue to ramble on and on about black holes and space and the status of my headphones here at home, Frank, I want to throw it over to you. What was your overall impression reading this article? Did anything stand out to you as particularly interesting that maybe you were learning for the first time about black holes or entropy or Stephen Hawking's theories altogether?
Well, I think what's interesting about the article overall is that we're still learning from general relativity and Stephen Hawking. Like that's well, I mean, I think specifically the general relativity, because what was that first, like, that theory first published? So
yeah, so that was Einstein
Right.
way back in, I don't know exactly
30s,
when it was
40s?
published, 20s or 30s,
Yeah.
100
like,
years ago.
So like the fact that there's still like using that and as a framework to work on this new theory, and then it's then it's proven. It's like it's still like the dude was right in a theory, like without any of the advancements of the science has made in the past 100 years, right? So I think the fact that it still holds up to a certain degree is pretty wild, and just I think demonstrates what a brilliant mind Einstein is. And then obviously you have Stephen Hawking, who he has radiation named after him for with these black holes. And so what I thought was, I don't know, maybe correct me if I'm wrong in terms of my understanding what they said here in the article, but it seems like if you have two black holes and then they both merged, that like they're, for like simplicity's sake, if black hole has a number of 2 and then black hole B has a number of 3, then it becomes a 5. It doesn't it doesn't shrink or it just keeps growing. Is that am I understanding that right?
I think so, Frank. I think this is my same interpretation
Yeah.
of the paper, of the article as well.
Which is interesting because all that mass, I'm just curious. I mean, black holes in general, I'm curious what happens to all that mass where does it, like, what happens?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, right? So I think we all kind of have this understanding of black holes as a singularity in space-time, where you have like massive objects like planets and stars get like sucked in and compressed down to the size of a speck of dust, right? At least to kind of just put it in terms of where we can kind of conceptualize everything that's going on. So it's really interesting. It's like, I almost want to say it's kind of like how they talk about Ant-Man in the Ant-Man movies, where he's able to shrink because the molecules, the distance between the molecules shrinks together. And I always kind of wondered, maybe that's the same thing that's going on in a black hole, which is why, Ant-Man couldn't really exist in real life the way that they present the science in the movies, because if he's like a 200-pound man, even if he's compressed to the size of an ant, well, now he's an ant that weighs 200 pounds.
Right.
So that creates quite the problem if he's trying to, stand on somebody's shoulder or even walk across dirt without sinking down to the bottom of the pile of mud or something.
Right.
So, I did do a video about that years ago on this same channel, by the way, if you want to check that out, why Ant-Man does not make sense. So there's my plug for the day.
Attack Marvel. That's a real good strategy.
Listen, it's all in good fun, right?
Yeah.
I consider myself someone who is perfectly capable of suspending their disbelief in a movie, but when something in a movie presents itself as a learning experience for science or physics specifically, I think that's kind of fun because, let's face it, a lot of people aren't necessarily drawn to an interest in science. The average person, let's say, science is considered to be one of the more difficult subjects, growing up in elementary school and middle school and high school. And so unless you're someone who's particularly interested in it, it's something people try to avoid on a daily basis. So when I'm trying to do my best as an aspiring science communicator, I'm like, well, we all love movies, right? So let's talk about Ant-Man, but then like sneaking in like, here's some physics, by the way.
Right. It's like having your dinner and you're having your steak, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, here's some broccoli, and you're like, whoa, I just came for the steak, but now I'm eating broccoli. Oh, it actually goes pretty good with the steak. And so I think that's also
maybe
pretty good
put
way
a little
of Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I got
Maybe you put a little garlic butter on the broccoli, like
yeah,
liven it up a
exactly,
bit.
exactly. Yeah. What I wanted to ask you though
Mhm.
is so the black holes basically is this really saying that like black holes can't like quote unquote evaporate? They just can't like disappear. Like it will always, in a sense, I guess, remain unless it's growing.
Yeah, I think so. In a lot of ways, I think black holes are still kind of a mystery. Like scientists are still trying to learn more about black holes. I mean, the problem with black holes is you can't really see them, right? Because the gravity is so strong, it literally pulls in photons of light around it, which is why it's a black hole. You
Yeah.
can't see anything, but you can see the effects of its gravity on stars and planets and
Right.
solar systems around the black hole.
Because it'll like
And so
warp,
the
it'll
yeah,
warp the light, and like you can, but like, but by the time
exactly.
you find it, it's like, well, that's already happened.
Yeah, so basically I think the event horizon is what we are able to like kind of see and go, hey, there's something weird going on in space over here. It's got to be a black hole.
Yeah.
So it really is fascinating stuff. And I thought this was a fun story because everyone knows Stephen Hawking. I think everyone to some extent kind of has like an interest in black holes. Like that's like one of the first things people think of
True.
when they want to talk to me about science. They're like, what's going on with black holes? I'm like, bro, I don't know. But hey, here's a story. Let's learn something new together. Turns out Stephen Hawking was right about one of his theories, and it was proven with gravitational waves, which then them in and of themselves are something that's new that in terms of like the last 100 years, gravitational waves are something that was recently discovered and
Yeah.
proven, I believe. So it's interesting, and I think it's really cool. Like you said, like take general relativity, for example. It's a theory that Einstein had 100 years ago, and it's held up. It's stood the test of time, and every single time there's been observation or a scientific experiment to prove or disprove general relativity or special relativity, it always ends up getting proven. Like the evidence itself is always, even 100
What's
years
the
later, we get new
win-loss
evidence.
ratio for Einstein at this rate? Like that's what I want to know. Like
That's a good question.
I feel like it's a losing effort, like trying to disprove this stuff.
That sounds like a fun idea for one of those tracker websites where it's just
Oh yeah.
constantly showing the win and loss numbers of parts of Einstein's theories and showing the overall percentage of how much of it has been proven and tested to be correct over time.
Because I do like this quote at the very end of the article in
Mm-hmm.
regards to talking about general relativity, and they just say we're like, ah, it was right again. Just like because
Oh
like
boy.
because you're not necessarily learning something new, you're just proving what you thought would be there. You're not learning really anything, but I guess what they found here can lead to learning new things though.
Mhm. Definitely. And that's kind of why the term theory, people need to really understand and appreciate what that word means. Because it's not like, I have a theory that in the next Fast and Furious movie, Dominic Toretto is going to drive his car on top of water. It's like, that's not the same thing as like, saying the theory of relativity, because yes, it was a theory that Einstein developed, and he kind of took what we knew about space time and everything and wrote this theory around the stuff that we knew for a fact, and was like, here is a logical explanation based on the evidence of how space time most likely works. And it's something that has been tested time and time again over the course of 100 years. I mean, that's the great thing, and I've brought it up on this show many times before. That's the great thing about scientists, is that everyone wants to be the one to disprove something that's like
Right.
huge, that everyone says is the correct thing, in terms of, relativity or even evolution, for example. Evolution is another similar thing, another similar theory that has been tested and tested and tested over time and has constantly been proven to be right. And so that's why when you like look at the theory of evolution or the theory of relativity, you can say with a large amount of confidence that those theories are what we know to be true, because every time someone's tried to disprove it, it ends up getting more proven.
Yeah. I think what's interesting though about that is every time you disprove something with, let's say, within relativity, you go, ha! It's got to be like a double-edged sword because it's like, ha, you were wrong, but okay, now we need to figure out why this did not happen, why this did not pan out, and because that just opens another can of worms in terms of, all right, well, we can prove that that's not the case. Is that the? It just it doesn't really. I don't know. Does it solve anything? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know in terms of your point of view or what you're studying, I guess. But I got to imagine it's like, okay, that's not the case. Why? Because it's like, now you still got to figure out the other thing. So it's just, I know it's really interesting that, again, going back to theory of relativity, that they're just like, yeah, all right, we figured it out why, and he was right without doing any of this other stuff. But no, it's just really fun to think that over 100 years, like, that's incredible. That's just incredible stuff.
It is truly remarkable for Einstein all these years later to constantly being proven right in his theories. It's a good vote of confidence in the theories of relativity, right? I mean, I'm like, hey, we could trust this is pretty solid basis for what we know to be true. So, at the end of the day, it's really cool. And like I said, trust me, scientists want to disprove the theory of relativity. If you are a physicist, astrophysicist, someone who works specifically in space-time and all that crazy, incredible, fun stuff that goes way over my own head a lot of the times as well, if you were the person to disprove the theory of relativity in any way, you would immediately become the most famous scientist in the history of the world.
I would
immediately.
Yeah.
So,
because and also in this article, they talked about improving the theory of quantum gravity, and I'm like, what in the hell? Because they're saying they're trying to improve the theory by combining the two disciplines, and then if that results in any failure of a black hole abiding by those rules, then you can that's kind of like going against, I guess, relativity, I guess, and then because then like we were just talking about, so I don't even know what quantum gravity is. That just mean like gravity down to the smallest level, or how that operates at the smallest levels?
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine something like that. I myself am not too familiar with quantum gravity, but I imagine, how gravity works on the quantum level.
So we need Scott Lang, is what you're saying. We need
Hank Pym more so.
Hank Pym, yeah.
Scott Lang's a smart man. He has a master's degree in electrical engineering, but he's no
sacrifice.
Hank
You don't want something like your brightest right away. Maybe.
Oh well, no. He's going to be the guy to do the experiment for sure. But he's not going to. Hank Pym is going to be the one to come up with the theories. And then it's like, all right, Scott, put on the suit and prove me right or wrong.
Gotcha. Right.
Better hope that I'm right.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. So really interesting story, guys. Feel free to read it for yourself and, I don't know, come up with your own fun theories. And of course, hope that you get something out of it. This story, by the way, guys, comes from Science News, and links to all the articles that we talk about today will be in the description down below if you want to learn more and go down that rabbit hole of science-y Wikipedia goodness, because let's be honest, it could be really fun and educational sometimes. Just saying, I find myself doing that more often than I should, but it's okay. But before we move on to talk about pond scum, which I'm sure you're all dying to talk about, I just want to thank everyone watching live right now, watching on after the fact on the replay. I see we've got someone new here today, Jackson Clishold. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Thank you so much for joining us here today. If you guys want to join in on the conversation, feel free to put your own thoughts and feelings and opinions in the live chat, and I will read them out and join us in on the discussion. And again, if you're watching after the fact, leave a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on all these science news stories. I would love to get a conversation going. That's what this show is ultimately all about. And please, guys, hit that like button. And if you want to see more of myself and amazing special guests like Frank Janisch here, talk about science news on a weekly basis, hit that subscribe button and that little notification bell so you don't miss a thing. With all that being said, let's move on to our second story here. As assuming you're done talking about gravitational waves, Frank, I don't want to cut you short.
I could wax poetic about gravitational waves, Brandon, but there's scum out there that need to be addressed.
Mm-hmm. You know, in the Star Wars universe, there's rebel scum to deal with, and in our universe, there is pond scum, because as it turns out, much like rebel scum, it can release a paralyzing pollutant into the air. Joking, of course, I am on the rebellion's side in Star Wars.
I was like, where are you going with this?
Okay, guys, just because I'm slightly dressed like a stormtrooper today. This is a lab coat, I assure you. I'm a man of science. Look more like an Orson Krennic look, actually.
Yeah, that's a little troubling.
Yeah. Okay. But deploy the garrison of science, because it's time to talk about as the summer sun warms the still surface of a pond on Nantucket Island in Massachusetts. This water contains fertilizer that had washed off of a nearby farm during a storm. In the warm water, and I hope I pronounced this remotely correctly, cyanobacteria gorge themselves on nutrients from that fertilizer, and soon their abundance mushrooms into a quote-unquote bloom, and these bacteria can release a toxin that poisons the air, according to a new study. So, and this article, guys, comes to us from Science News for Students, which I think is always a great source of articles that we like to talk about on this show, because it's meant for students. It's meant to inform and educate, and well, we're all here to learn something new together, right? We're all students in some way, shape, or form
of life.
Students of life. So there you go. But people often call these bacteria blue-green algae, even though they aren't algae at all. Much as plants do, these bacteria use sunlight to turn carbon dioxide into food. Along the way, they burp out oxygen as waste. In fact, cyanobacteria were among the first living things on Earth. They helped fill our early atmosphere with oxygen, but fed too many nutrients, cyanobacteria can grow out of control, and these freshwater blooms may look like scum, foam, mats, or even paint floating atop the water. A warming climate and the growing use of fertilizers has upped the number of so-called algal blooms, and I hope I pronounced that word remotely correctly as well. So, Frank, before I get further down this pond scummy hole of cyanobacteria, I want to get your thoughts on this article, just your overall impressions, and if there was anything particularly interesting that stood out to you, feel free to get a conversation going on that as well.
Well, I went for a run a few days ago, and I ran by a pond, and it had a layer on top of it, and it got me thinking, was I exposed? I don't know. And so this is interesting because I never really thought, like, obviously in nature, not everything's your friend, poison ivy or what have you. So to know that, like, there could be a body of, even just a small body of water, if you're around it, there's a potential that it could be toxic. And in some, to what degree, I don't know if they go that deep into it in the article. I can't recall, but nonetheless, I think it's interesting that we're still we're finding new things that can harm us every day from nature. I think is kind of like my main takeaway. It's like just another new. It's like in the news. It's like, coffee, too much is bad for you, or like something like that. And then it's just another thing in science where it's just like, hey guys. When we get too much of it, it's not good. It's like, feed these things in moderation, as in everything in life.
Yeah, certainly. And, according to the article here, it says freshwater microbes are to blame for most people and animals in the United States that are sickened by such aquatic blooms. So we're talking specifically about freshwater here, which, thank goodness, most of the world is saltwater, right? But it releases a toxin, or known as ATX, that's the natural poison that's created by cyanobacteria. And so it says here in the article that mostly you're good as long as you don't go into the water, right? Like most people who get poisoned by the cyanobacteria, the ATX specifically, it's people who walk into the water and get direct exposure to the water itself. But sometimes it could become airborne, specifically on days where it rains and you have like water particulates that splash up into the air. And so it looks like, scientists did some air sampling of the pond area to see this airborne toxin. And I just think it's a really interesting, like not to alarm anybody, right? Not to scare anybody away from taking a stroll by the pond. But I thought this was an interesting story for us to kind of like see, okay, scientists were aware that we have this problem of these toxins in freshwater ponds, and they developed an experiment with instrumentation to measure the amount of airborne toxin and see how much of a health risk it is. And so I thought that was just a particularly interesting thing for us to see, because I mean, it's just an example of what scientists do on a daily basis. It's not just all rocket science and black holes and COVID-19. Like
I know
that one
like,
in particular.
With COVID-19, I was like, and then you show me this toxin in the air. I was like, Brandon, we're just, come on. Like, there's another thing in the air. Before I read, the article, I was like, come on. I was like, oh, there's another thing. No, but I think it's also, I think this is kind of serves maybe as a PSA reminder of if you have, you're walking your dog or something like that, and you go by a pond, maybe don't let them drink, that water out of the pond, because it could be fatal for your dog if it's, one of these tainted blooms, so that's in the water that has made that poisonous. So I think as the summer hits now, everyone's gonna be outside and walking their dogs and going to parks and forest preserves and what have you. Maybe double check that body of water before you let your dog or any other pet, I guess, take a sip of water, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is like something to be cautious of, right? If you're like around a pond area, especially this happened in New England, this particular experiment, I believe. So, and I think they kind of talk about the article, like experiments are kind of ongoing. They don't necessarily know for a fact how the ATX entered the air, but they do know that they were able to capture it airborne. And it is a health risk, they say, that should not be taken lightly. But I think as long as you take caution, if you go for a stroll around a pond, like, if you take like your dog out for a walk or something, that's something just be cautious of, but don't be too frightened. And I mean, hey, if we're all, I know like California just opened up back today, and there's a lot of restrictions being removed for COVID-19, but if you are a person like me who still wears their mask as often as they can, that might help as well, if this is something that you're afraid of. So
I also think, I think this is very obviously helpful stuff, or experiments and tests that are being conducted, because while like the general person might not read or see one of these articles, I would like to think that people who work at the parks and whatnot at these types of areas, that they would be knowledgeable, that they would be up on this, to then they informed that immediate public. It's kind of like a precaution, like, hey, look, there might be something going on with this pond, so we're going to kind of close it off, just so you know. Just so you know.
Yeah, definitely. So watch out for that pond scum, guys, but don't be too nervous. Science is helping to solve the problem.
I mean, look, it's a great conversation. It's a great conversation starter for a park ranger. Like, hey, pond scum, right? Like, you guys see any pond scum around here? Like, crazy, huh? And they'll look at you like, you really know your stuff. You must watch the periodic table. Yeah, that's what they're gonna say.
I love that. Honestly, that would be very flattering if that happened in real life. Like, you guys check out that episode of the periodic table. Like, pond scum, am I right? So yeah, guys, just be cautious of it. And if there's any more developments on the story, I'm sure it'll come back in a special segment someday, because sometimes I like to do that. I like to take old stories that we covered, and when there's new developments, bring it back in a special segment sometime down the road. So with all that being said, I think it's time that we move into our special segment for this week. But before we do, I did see we had James Lott Jr. of JLJ Media enter the chat here. So just welcome. Thank you for watching the show this week. James, really appreciate it. He says he was near a pond with a layer on it too. And yes, Star Wars, 100%, yes. 100% on board with the wars in the stars. But something that I don't know if I'm 100% on board with is, should we abolish the left turn? According to scientists, the answer is yes. They say here it might be time to give up your wild ways. A ways yeah. Spelled a W-A-Z-E. Clever. New research suggests eliminating at least some left turns will make roads a lot safer. For drivers in the United States, turning left is one of the most dangerous moves on the road. Approximately 61% of all crashes that take place at intersections involved a left-hand turn. I wonder how much personally of those percentages take place in Los Angeles, because Frank, I don't know. I know you currently don't have a car in Los Angeles, but I don't know how familiar you are with how difficult it can be to take a left turn in many parts of the city. There's no left turn signals almost anywhere. It is so difficult. So I don't know. Maybe it's eliminating left turns in general could be a thing that will ultimately benefit cities like Los Angeles and similar cities across the country. Or guys, just add more left turn signals, please.
That too, yeah.
Yeah, that too.
One of the things they talked about in here was, aside from like the left turn science behind it, in terms of just general safety, when you make a left turn and the yellow lights, like you should probably be extending the duration of the yellow light. Yeah. Which seems like a pretty easy fix. I don't know about you, Brandon. Like, you just add a couple more seconds, add 20 or whatever seconds, and it might make for a longer light, but it'll make for a more safer intersection, and possibly, even save lives. So I think that was kind of like, okay, that's the one thing you can do. But then, it gives a very unscientific map of, making these 3 right-hand turns to make that what would have been a left turn for you at that one intersection. So, and also talking about, coming from Chicago, growing up there, it's all very much a grid. So if you were to just, I can see that working, and there's plenty of one-way streets as well in the city. So if you were to implement or subtract, I think it's also saying, like, we're not going to completely get rid of every single left turn in the world, but if you did it in areas that makes sense where there's high accident rates, I certainly think that's definitely worth exploring. First extend the yellow lights, I would say, and then, maybe institute no left turns at particular intersections. And it seems, it's a science. It's kind of hard to argue with this one because, like, it has pretty good, I think, solutions, and a couple solutions. It's like that. You make these right-hand turns, or you also extend the yellows. So at first, when I saw the headline, I was like, well, that's an attention grabber. And I was like, NASCAR's not going to be happy about this. But turned out it was just about the general streets. So, okay.
Yeah, could you imagine? Like, NASCAR's like, you guys, you got to go clockwise. You just
we're going
the other way.
The other way. The old era is over. Yeah,
it's not safe.
This is the right turn era. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder why that is. Why racing is left counterclockwise turns.
I don't know, Brandon. That's a great question.
Might be interesting to learn the history behind that.
Yeah, it might be.
Yeah, I might have to go down a Wikipedia rabbit hole after the show. But we do have a little graphic from the article here showing us what it would be like to take right turns instead of left turns. For those of you who are visual learners, such as myself, this is what it would be like. So you're going a longer distance, but they say in the article the time that you would have to wait at the red light, specifically if there's no left turn signal. Like, I know, like I said, here in Los Angeles, there's no left turn signals at a lot of intersections. What you ultimately have to do is kind of like finagle your way like into the middle of the intersection and then wait for the light to turn yellow and then kind of turn left once it's safe to do so when the light is yellow. And it's kind of like, well, you're kind of taking a left on red, but at the same time, you were in the middle of the intersection. And it's not safe to stay in the middle of the intersection. So it's like you kind of have to finesse your way like that. And it's really unsafe. So I think eliminating them altogether, making those left turns impossible, and utilizing a system to make these kind of right turns, I think in a lot of intersections, it could cause a different type of weird traffic. I might imagine there might be a line wrapped around the block of cars, depending on how busy the intersection is. But I don't know. I could see for sure why it would be a safer option, and maybe even in some cases a speedier option as well to kind of do that and take those types of turns. But I do agree, like the article, like you said, extend the yellow light. That would help people doing kind of what I just described.
Right.
You know, and safer, because some people sometimes cut it a little too close, right? They maybe try to follow the car behind them, and then the other car sees the green light and goes without looking. I've seen that happen before to a car in front of me, and it was a little close. Yeah. Thankfully, there was no accident, but that was close. So I could see accidents happening this way, and the scientific studies behind the percentages of how these turns cause accidents and what have you. I think it might be smart. I think don't eliminate the left turn entirely. That could be definitely a huge learning curve, I think, for a lot of drivers out there, if all of a sudden you can't take left turns. Yeah. Although they do mention some cities like San Francisco, Salt Lake City, and Wilmington, Delaware have already eliminated or have limited left turns, if you will. So I don't know. I think, I was going to say the length of the yellow light, increase that. I think it will help. And also, like these other cities have done, limit the left turns. There might be some intersections where a left turn with an appropriate left turn signal is still the safest option. Yeah. But I think it's a case by case basis. Would you agree with that, Frank?
Oh, absolutely. Because if you got if you're going to make these right turns, and that city block is, it can stretch for, I don't know how long, maybe an undesirable amount, I guess, whatever that may be for whoever, right? That's pretty subjective. So, and then that time to make that loop around the block just to go across the street, I think can obviously get very aggravating for some drivers. And once they revisit that intersection all the time, they'll know, I'm not doing that. I'm going to make a left anyway. So you definitely got to be situational in terms of what's more ideal, in terms of the length and the time, and I think that takes a lot of, planning and investigating in terms of what intersections it works best for and wouldn't work best for. But I think the other thing that if it does get implemented, I would be curious if there's a date announced, like August let's say August 1st, no more left turns in the city of Springfield, whatever, right? I can just see the uproar of people what? We can't do left turns. But I wonder what would happen if you just didn't really announce it publicly so much. You were just we're doing this on August 1st. I wonder how many people would if you just gradually instituted less and less and less left turns. I wonder how many people would be like, hey, what's going on here? It'd be interesting. I feel like that should be a segment. If Parks and Rec was still around, that should have been an episode. That would have been funny.
That would be a funny episode of Parks and Rec. Yeah.
Abolish all left turns. Just go to the extreme with that on that show.
That'd be actually if they ever did another reunion show, like they did that Zoom one for COVID. That would be really funny. I can imagine Leslie Knope and city council, guys, we're abolishing the left turn. Studies say it's safer to do so. Right, exactly. We're gonna go do that. And then she thinks it's a great idea. Everyone's on board, and then all of a sudden there's 1 million people at City Hall complaining about not being able to turn left.
It's such a Pawnee move. I mean, it really is.
A Pawnee move. Yeah, for sure. That'd be a good episode if the Parks and Recreation writers are watching, and I know that you are. That would be a great episode idea. For sure.
Maybe you should be a part of one of those. You know how Seinfeld has Seinfeld of modern time tweets?
Yes.
Maybe that'll pop up on a Parks and Rec one, if there even is one.
That would be a perfect modern Parks and Rec tweet. Yeah. I know this show is not that old, but
right, but
I think so. Maybe I'll write it up myself. I'll give you credit, Frank. You deserve all the credit.
I mean, I have video evidence, so
I'll delete this video.
Damn.
The tweet's more important than the show. Okay. This is the big time we're talking about here, Frank. With all that said, though, my voice kind of cracked there. That was weird. Oof. I
wasn't going to say anything, but I was, not on the air. I was definitely going to bring it up after. Yeah. But, you decided to address it now.
Okay. I feel like I have to address everything. Like, for instance, there was like a weird noise and I made a face because the coaster stuck to the bottom of my water cup, which happens sometimes. And the coaster fell.
The coaster's doing a little too good of a job.
Yeah, and it startled me, and the water kind of splashed everywhere.
Oh boy!
Thankfully, it wasn't pond scum. Even though my coaster is 2 swans, it looks like they're about to kiss.
That's maybe they are.
Because swans mate for life. I don't know if you knew that, but it's quite a romantic.
That is
species. But anyways, Frank, I do have one question for you regarding left turns. Other than putting up a sign that simply says "No left turn allowed here," because we've all seen signs like that on the road in certain situations, or like no U-turn signs, for example. Let's say, other than a no left turn sign, do you think there's any other way that they could discourage drivers from taking left turns at intersections where they don't want them to happen?
I think there's no realistic way probably to institute this, but we'll give you $5 for every left turn you don't make. Or it's like some maybe get some fast food chain, which is not really the healthiest thing to use as like motivation. It's like was it like Taco Bell? Like if someone steals a base in the World Series, you get a free taco.
Yeah.
If you don't make if no left turns are made at this intersection for a week, then everybody gets a free burger or whatever or something. I don't know, something like that. I don't know.
That tells me a lot about you as a person, Frank. You're a very positive reinforcement kind of guy.
Yeah.
I myself, I was thinking more of the negative reinforcement route, where you put up like a red light camera at the intersection, like we have already existing. But every time someone takes a left turn, snap a picture of their license plate, send them a ticket in the mail.
I also think now that we've kind of not mastered, but we have better just like projection systems.
Mm-hmm.
No, this would be a driving hazard. I would say just flash up, stop turning left, like a projection. I think that's another driving hazard, so that wouldn't work exactly. But
put up a sign that says "Don't turn left, get a free taco."
Yeah. Want a free taco?
A taco stand on every corner, just like Donald Trump promised was going to happen when Hillary Clinton was elected president. Right. A taco truck on every corner, and every single corner could have a sign that says "Turn right, get a taco."
I don't know about you, but that's the America I want to live in.
That's the America I want to live in as well. Yeah. When he said that, I think I remember that at like one of the debates, in 2016. I was like, and that sounds great to me.
So far, so good.
I don't know what you're talking about, guy.
Yeah.
And again, not a man known for speaking logic or reason. So, there is that. Okay. All right. Before we get too political on the show, because I do like to keep it, tame. This is a science show for everybody of all ages.
I thought we gave him props on the taco thing.
We gave him props. Tacos are great. Tacos are great. Awkward silence. And that's over. Thank you guys so much for joining us for the show here today. It was a lot of fun talking science with you, Frank Janisch. That is your name.
That's my name.
That is your name. So where can people find that name on the internet if they want to keep up with what you're doing? If you have anything you'd like to plug that, you think people watching might have an interest in watching, feel free. Let them know.
Sure. You can follow me on social media if you'd like at FrankieJ29 on Twitter and or Instagram. Also, as Brandon said up top, I help co-host the Schmoedown Rundown on the Schmoedown Entertainment Network, covering the movie trivia Schmoedown. And, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much the things I got going on. Just check out Schmoedown. It'll help me stay employed with that. The longer that keeps going, the longer I can keep working on it.
There you guys help Frank and even myself to a certain degree stay employed. Okay. We really need your financial support. No, but like and a subscribe that doesn't cost you anything except maybe if you have, some cramps in your finger or
You know
like,
what? I also tried to. I just submitted like the verification thing on Twitter, try to get verified, and really using like the Schmoedown thing. I don't think it's not gonna work. But I was like, what if it does work? Because like they asked for a bunch of stuff, and it's like, yeah, I don't have any of this. I think it's not gonna work. But
guys, help Frank get verified.
Yeah,
please.
Yeah,
that's
tweet,
what. If you
tweet at Jack and be like, hey.
If you have any takeaway today, that's it. I am, of course, your host, Brandon Hanna. You can find me unverified on Twitter and Instagram at BrandonHanna07. If you're watching right now, you've already found my YouTube channel, youtube.com/BrandonHanna. Once again, I ask guys, please find the kindness in your heart to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell if you feel so inclined. Really appreciate it. It goes a long way. I'm on that slow, tumultuous, that's the word, right?
Tumultuous?
Tumultuous climb to reach 1,000 subscribers. I hope to get there. So please help me do that if you can, out of the kindness of your heart. I do also have a Patreon, guys, patreon.com/BrandonHanna. I do a monthly stream over there. Last month was a virtual hangout. This month, I am going to do a watch along, I think sometime in the next week, ironing down those details. So stay tuned. A watch along of 2010, the year we make contact, the sequel to 2001, A Space Odyssey, because this is the movie you have all been asking for to do a watch along on the internet. Because, I mean, who else is doing a watch along of this movie? Let's face it, you need this in your life. So please, guys, head on over to patreon.com and I will say the cliche, select which tier is right for you. Help me pay my bills. Help Frank get verified. And until next time, guys, thank you for taking time out of your day for this moment of